My name is Tennyson. In this short overview video, you're going to learn what is WeManage Procurement all about, how it can address your purchasing strategy and requirements. Let's dive into it. Using paper-based and spreadsheet in procurement pose a labor-intensive challenges. When it comes to audit and compliances, it often is harder to prove why or who make the decision to purchase a big contract. Using eProcurement, we're able to address this. You can even like working from home because now most of the processes and evaluation is actually digital. So end of the day, you have a peace of mind when it comes to compliance. WeManage eProcurement is a great way to extend your ERP or financial system to make it e-enable for the vendors and employee to do self-service. For instance, vendor can get a award or PO and then submit the invoice match back to their DO. The submission would trigger an internal evaluation or validation process. Once it's approved, the invoice would trigger a payment by financial system, and yet the status can update back to the vendor. So such a self-service capability is the accent of eProcurement. But you have to look for a solution that is good to have unlimited users because you do not know the growth of the number of vendors. At the same time, WeManage Procurement give you a lot of flexibility. For example, you can do it on a premise deployment, or you prefer ready cloud, that is private cloud or public cloud. We have other extension. A good way to do it is payment gateway that allows vendors to pay for vendor registration fees or tender fees. WeManage have this tool series. It can be a public cloud, software as a service at WeManage.cloud. Most enterprise may prefer to have a bespoke solution that is project-based, which allow you to do customization and integration. Now, let's look at procure-to-pay, starting with vendor management. Allow me to navigate to show you what is vendor management all about. Vendor management is to have a centralized database of all these vendors' informations that you gather. You can basically have a single point to access all the vendor with different statuses and different categorization. First off is to have a profiling, right? You can get the vendor to register to have all these profilings that you manage over here. Now in this sample, we're showing you PO, but you can have other things from basically the tender that they participate or the evaluation. You can look from here their growth or basically if their performance is degrading. How do we get there in the first place? We prefer the vendors to do the self-registration that you see in the blue color here. So they will do most of the profilings and submitting all the necessary attachments for your evaluation. However, we have the green color portion. Authorized user can do the backend data entry to create the records on behalf of the vendors. And in certain scenario, you can also create a simpler vendor profile. We call them the one-off vendors. Now, let's take a look at the self-service vendor registration process. You're going to get a portal that is for vendors to register so they can sign up as a new users with a unique ID. So typically, that's how we identify who are they. Once they log in, they can see that everything is blank because they are yet to fill up their profile. The profile is customizable if it's a bespoke solution, else it's following a best practice template. It basically covers all their background, their track record, the plant and machinery resources, and all the necessary supporting document. Vendors will take their time to fill up all this information. So that basically saves you a lot of energy. I just quickly go through some of the typical use cases here. The most important one is categorization or work type, job grade. These are the categorization or subcategory to define, for instance, if a company is registered as an IT provider, are they doing hardware or software? So you can actually build the subcategory. When the vendors are ready for submission, these are typical processes. it also happens in the entire process. You're able to see things like rework. When you validate the information, you need to make a decision. However, besides rejecting or approving, you can also ask the vendors to resubmit. And of course, for approved vendors, we have other blacklisting options. All the workflow will have email to alert the vendors or the employee. In this case, now it's the employee's turn or procurement department to go and validate or we call them pre-qualification. How is this vendor general health, for their financial, their performance? So you can go through all this information. The system also have this evaluation template to give the scorecard. So when the person is checking all this information, system can give scoring. So when you exceed certain score, it can become an approved vendors. The other check and balances. This sample showing you system would detect if a particular director is holding more than a company in your register database. So that's kind of useful. Some company do this type of checking. As we say, if vendors is the one who actually key in most of the information, we can help you to further save time by giving you additional references, can be KPI. For example, when they key in, you can know how is their financial strength. It's also part of your pre-qualification process. When you have gone through the pre-qualification checking, you can make a decision if this vendor is supposed to be approved, or you can ask them to rework and resubmit. There are other ways you can evaluate vendor performance. One of them is post-award, or you have a contract. So let's say if you have a contract that is, let's say 2 years, you can say periodically every half a year, I want to have a evaluation or upon PO. By giving the buyers, the end users, who is your employees, the capability to do self-service vendor performance review is good. So every time the vendors done their job, deliver, you can get the buyers to validate so that after a few years, you can actually see if a particular vendor's performance is like improving or is actually degrading. So those are the useful centralized database of vendor management. We can next move to purchasing. When it comes to purchasing, there's a concept called material master. Company who practice material master, you have a centralized code for most of the critical things that you purchase. The advantage of this practice is you can keep a reference of the past quotation, tender bids, and all the information. In the future, when you try to look up what is the price trend for this particular material, you can do so, right? You can actually pull up all the quoted item and their price reference point. So it's a great pre-purchasing decision or reference you can have. For PR, we have this employee purchase requisition. Employee can raise a PR and go through all this process. Now, throughout the whole process, you will see samples like this. So when we talk about approval, it's not limited to one levels. It will based on your level of authority. Example, non-budgeted, go to CFO. If it's more than 50,000, GM or 2 levels approval. All these are configurable. Once it's approved, then it will trigger the next stage. In this case for PR, procurement officer would go through a sourcing strategy for approved PR. Let's dive into the different options that you can have for purchase requisition. If you sign a contract or a price agreement, so every time you want to order something, it makes reference to draw down from the particular contract. Some buyer will say, I want to buy a powerful computer, but I just don't know what I want. So there's a few ways. One of the easier way for stationary and frequently buy item is for you to build a product catalog. Then the buyers, when they raise a PR, they just have to specify the quantity they need. Other ways, as I mentioned, write-in is another method. I want a powerful computer, so it's a free text. They write. But then during peer review, IT department would help them to put in the proper spec for them. So all these PR would have a lot of items that they want to purchase. Sometimes when you do bulk purchase, you can also split up the cost allocation to different cost center because you're buying licenses, but it's actually shared by multiple department or business unit. So these are the typical highlights of PR. Let's ready to go to a PR process. This is an employee view you're looking at. So employee were able to see the entire menu, and PR is just one of the options that they can access. To create a PR is relatively straightforward. The whole concept is to replace the digital form. So you have a traditional form and some of these best practice fields, whether it's CapEx, OpEx, which cost center, quite typical. And the bespoke software allowed you to do customization. Software as a service SaaS would give you the best template like what we are showing you here. PR, you can say, I want to go for a training, then where's a brochure you can attach, define all the PR items. Here, I just show you one item, but it can be multiple items. When you're ready, the person who raised the PR can do a preview. As I mentioned, the whole objective is to replace the paper form. Now you digitize the PR process. Even the workflow, everything would be online. Everything would go through a email to trigger or to alert the next person. And all the workflow would have rework, reject, and approve. I mean, these are the common practices. For manager who work from home, they can basically, access from browser, iPad, they can approve or reject from the system. That's how easy the PR process is. When we finish PR, we'll be ready to go for sourcing. Sourcing strategy is talking about when we have approved PR, how can the items flow to, let's say, quotation, e-bidding, or e-tenders. So we have these few competitive bid options that is in orange color that we presented here. This other strategy is sometimes it's a single source. Let's say in the whole world, there's only one vendor supplying that goods. Then you can do a direct nego. Another option is the drawdown from an existing contract. So no need to go for tendering process. Just draw down from a particular contract. We start off with e-quotation. So e-quotation is a very short and quick way to get 3 to 5 quotation for you to compare price and so on. The beginning point is procurement officer will prepare what are the information for the vendors to quote, and then the vendors can participate by giving you the quotation. Here's the process of procurement officer preparing for internal draft, what they want the vendors to provide. Then they define all the items. Let's say, 10 items, they just list out one by one using the template over here. The next step is more interesting. That is a vendor list. So in vendor list, the approved vendors is in your database already. You just have to select them, and then who do you want to invite? Now the vendor whom you invited will receive an email notification. They would be notified. Is it this an email? Then they can say, hey, I want to decline. I'm not available to participate, or I do not have the right solutions, or I'm ready to participate. If they accepted the invitation, one of the key stages is once they accepted, they have a certain time, let's say 5 days or 3 days, to start putting in their price, attach all the relevant documents. Right, here's the attachment, and then they submit. So supposed to be very straightforward. Once they submitted and the due time came, then the system can open the tenders and allow you to compare. All the soft copy submissions are accessible online because everything will be in soft copy. From here, you can do certain evaluations such as price comparison, right? So price comparison allow you to quickly access what is the highest price, medium, and lowest bid. So system basically can save you quite a lot of efforts when it comes to simple and quick e-quotation. How about e-bidding? E-bidding is even shorter because it's real time. Normally it's open for like 1 or 2 items you bundle together and invite the vendors again to bid. The difference is because it's real time bid, you may open for a few hours or half a day, let the vendors bid. The vendor cannot see others' bidders' name, but they can see their price. This particular view is procurement officer's view. They can actually see in real time all the bidders' name and their price. You can even extend to a let's say another 5-10 minutes if the bidding is hot towards the end. So we cover e-quotation, e-bidding. Next option would be the comprehensive tendering process. So this is often the main reason you're looking for a procurement solution. You need something that is compliance for auditing and other best practices. For tender management, we cover most of these things. So from the look over here, you can see it's way more comprehensive than e-quotation. And the typical process will start from internal planning. You need to draft the tender documents, who to invite. So that's the area we call them the tender plan. Tender plan allow you to prepare for who are the committee members, the price elements, and so on. So I'm going to show you bit by bit. Now, here's a sample. Allow me to zoom in. You can define the start date, end date, and start filling in the sections or information, pricing summary, the items that you want, the tender document that you draft somewhere and then just upload here, the compliance table, and evaluation committee. Now, talking about evaluation committee, you can set up multiple team members. Here, I just show some very simple example. Actually, in, let's say, technical committee, you can have other members. That means multiple parties. Commercial, you can have different parties. This allow them to have different access right when they are working on the tender evaluation. One of the areas we automate is replacing the traditional Excel or spreadsheet you use for requirement compliance. Normally it's like few hundred lines, right? And the bidders have to say comply, partially comply, and so on. The way we automate is let the bidders sort of like respond digitally. Then the system can auto compute the score. So it's a time saving element. We also have another add-on option, part of the document management for tender library. So tender library is an add-on options that allow the team members to prepare all your draft, your PDF, your sort of like requirement price list in Excel. Once it's ready, the system can port it over. Else, you can also prepare, in any Windows folders or elsewhere, and then submit it to the system. Now, here's the next step that is actually more sort of like interesting. Allow me to zoom in. This is similar to the quotation that I showed you just now, is where we call them the invitation to bid, ITB. In the ITB process, you shortlist the vendors, and this list of vendors also have to go through an internal approval process. So you can actually, add or delete. But from here, you can actually see some of the statistics. So for customized version, you can even pull out like additional things. Over here, you really can see like performance review, whether they responded to your bid. Pretty useful for drafting. You are still drafting until you are ready for internal approval. So once the management approve, we're ready for e-tender. Just now, the entire view is by procurement team, right? Internal team. For eProcurement, the e-tender portion is for vendor self-service portal. They will receive an email notification say that they have been invited for certain tenders. In this case, it's a closed or restricted tender. From the portal, they can look at how many that has been invited. Let's zoom into one of the tenders. Just like e-quotation, e-tender allow you to accept or decline. Once you accept, the clock start running. You have X number of weeks or days to prepare, and these are all the sections of information all the bidders have to prepare. But then most of the information you can have options. So let's start with compliance. They can actually download the Excel file, potentially split to their subcontractor A, maybe certain section they pass to contractor B, subsequently compile back into an Excel file and upload back to the system. So same applies to price list. The pricing they can edit, maybe just a few lines, right? That is faster for them to edit this way. If the pricing elements or number of line items is a lot, in practice, we call them the bill of material or bill of quantity. Same thing, they can actually download as Excel file and upload again. All this sort of like a digitization allow you to compare the compliance evaluation as well as pricing comparison. In the entire system, you're able to see this tab that is really useful. It's called clarification. Instead of the vendor sending you email asking for, let's say, can I extend the tender, they can pose a question here. The advantage is audit trail because the information no longer scattered by email. We still use email to notify them, but one of the key information is all tracked in the system. You can reply one-to-one or reply one-to-many. When vendors are more or less ready, they can also upload to the system. Because this is the speed evaluation, so we have separate folders. If it's combined, then it's only one folder for them to upload. System do auto checking by section. When all the sections are completed, it will appear in green, and the submit buttons appears, allow them to submit. So upon closing date, system will inform all the relevant party, let's say technical evaluation, let's start the evaluation. You can see that there is also a business process bar to tell you where are you right now in particular stage and what are the checklists required to be done. In evaluation, let's say technical evaluation, technical committee can see that all the bidders, but they cannot see their name. See that? It's only bidder 1 or bidder 2, which is anonymous. The compliance score is automated in a way. System auto score their compliance, but then you can override with internal review score. All the soft copy is downloadable again from the folder. So when you work from home, this is an advantage. There's an internal scorecard. You can build like maybe 10 questions for the committee member to start filling in. How is this vendor performing? How is their solution fit? Then the system give you some average score by that committee. So a lot of time saving features here. When it comes to commercial evaluation, the pricing summary or pricing comparison is a great time saver. It tells you all the high and low for different elements. That means up to item level. Great saving in terms of time. For negotiation, resubmission that often happen, you can reopen the tender for, let's say, 3 days, only for 1 or 2 shortlisted vendors. Then they will resubmit. When they resubmit, we don't save it's one version, it's version 2, version 3. That allows you to track the progressively the discount and value adding. Finally, the system able to allow the committee member to make an award nomination. The nomination again has to go through approval process. So after award, we are basically ready for either giving them a PO, purchase order, or in other options may not be a PO, it can be a contract, or let's say a letter award. Award, as I mentioned, have 2 types. Or, one is a purchase order. The other one is a more comprehensive contract for typically more comprehensive terms. You may start off with a letter of award. Let's start with PO. Right, PO is probably shorter and easier to understand. PO, of course, you have a VO as well. So a PO process is drafted internally, go for approval, then give to the vendor as ePO. If the vendor accept it, we can pass to financial system if there's any integration. All these are quite normal. The process start off with, let's say, procurement officer. They will go to the system and check, now I'm ready to issue a new PO. The process is to convert from approved PR, the line item, let's say multiple PR combined into one PO, or one PR split to 2 POs. Another option is the awarded or like concluded tenders. The items also can be flow into a PO. Extra information the procurement officer have the key in would be make sure the cost center everything is correct, and then the PO item would flow through. Add in other things like a payment milestone, your payment schedule, attach any extra documents if there's any. All the approval, same, can be one level or multiple level. Email notification sent to the approval, then approval can approve, reject, or revoke. Let's say if it's approved, then the PO or proforma PO is ready. We can let a system send out the PO or financial system. So either way. The extra value add is e-award, meaning ePO. PO that has been approved would be deposited onto the vendor portal. Email notification sent to the vendor. Vendor now can actually log into the system, can say, okay, thank you for the award. Now they have options to accept or decline. They normally decline if they're out of stock or they cannot fulfill your requirement. Or the accepted PO, if there's any integration, we typically will integrate with your financial system together with the vendor information, like their bank information for payment purposes. So that is a quick overview about PO. Let's take a look at contract. So for contract management, it starts out with letter award, and then you have additional tracking and information about a contract, such as bank guarantee, right? Your insurance, changes to contract. So those are the additional things that some company do not practice in purchase order. So you have a contract listing of all the contracts that you want to manage. The advantage for procurement officer is reminders. Some of these contracts require renewal, or even their bank guarantee, right? Sometimes it may expire. So all this information tracking regarding the contract will be centralized in the system. Good for you to manage the entire life cycle for contract. Some require to check when is the signing, when is the stamping, and the contract line item behave a bit different from PO is the balance quantity. If you practice drawdown, you committed to order 100 quantities, then you have ordered 40 so far, then left behind the balance would be 60. Yeah. Other things that also have a renewal date could be guarantee and insurance related to a contract. And sometimes you have like changes to the timeline and also have cost impact to a contract. So the entire contract can manage this way using contract management. We have other options that is actually a contract library, allow you to manage the soft copy drafting of the legal NDA and contract. If you're interested, please talk to us. Final portion is post-award. Post-award is after the PO or contract, you would have delivery and also invoicing. So delivery can be in the form of proof of execution, can be a signed job sheet, delivery orders, or even just a proof of milestone has been done. After which invoicing can be billed. So in the practice, these are normally called three-way matching if you match against the orders. There's also, four-way matching or some exception case, such as, you can invoice without order. So over here, our example that I'm going to walk you through is based on three-way matching. And the matching is done by the vendors. We do support other options like scanning and so on. But let's talk about this advantage of getting vendor to do self-service. They want to claim the payment. So the vendor normally is like happy to submit all the scanned DO that your colleague or your warehouse have signed. They submit to you. Internal team just have to do some validation. This can save you a lot of effort if you scanning the document yourself. This is the interface of vendors and the journey how they submit their delivery. So once the job has been done, they have all this record that they have scanned, they are ready to upload to the system. First step is to match the PO and then define their DO numbers or job sheet, upload the scanned documents, and double check the quantity if it's like partial or full delivery. A system will send an email to notify internal employee to double check if the scanned DO everything is in order. Yep. If everything is fine, you just approve it. Vendors now is ready to do the next step because the delivery has been accepted and validated. The invoice submitted by the vendors will save finance a lot of time because of AP processing. Vendors do again the three-way matching. First step, they want to file in the claims for billing. Try to match to a PO, and the pre-approved delivery just now has been in the system that will map this is the particular milestone I like to claim. And next step is to attach the official invoice and submit to the system. Again, there's always an internal team to validate it. Once it's approved, system will say to finance, please make the payment. So finance make the payment and update back to the vendor's portal to let them know the payment status. And lastly, with all the information, you would have a lot of informations like report and dashboard. We quickly go through some of this. We have certain options like using Microsoft Power BI. If you use that, we do have a template to tell you the spend analysis. Else, without this, we still have a standard report as well. So we tell you have this vendor information, tender informations, and so on. So this particular sample is not using Power BI, meaning the system itself will have built-in report and dashboard. Power BI basically allows you to build your own additional dashboard if you wish to. And all this report you can export to another spreadsheet or PDF, forward to third party. You can do so. That sums up the procure-to-pay process. And finally, let me give you a quick overview who we are. WeWork is the company behind WeManage Procurement. We are basically a software house specialized with Microsoft technology. Started off in year 2004. We do solutions like intranet and document management using SharePoint. That's where your tender library and also contract library comes in. CRM can be used for vendor relationship management if you want to turn it around this way. The solutions that we provide, like WeManage Procurement, is considered as an independent software. Last year, we also won the Microsoft Partner of the Year for business applications. Now, the blue color that you see here, this is the solutions that I just presented to you. WeManage Procurement. You can extend to document management for your contract and tender library. And the whole solution that we presented so far is based on Microsoft technology. The value adding to your organization is familiarity, that is like using Excel, Word, Outlook. It's basically single sign-on with your Windows ID as well. So these are the great benefits for the employee. For more information, please feel free to contact us or contact the partners who are showing you this solution. Thank you for watching.